Dermot Desmond has unleashed nuclear warfare on Brendan Rodgers. Welcome back to Fog Football. There's a lot to get into, so let's not waste any time. Alright, this is insane. Now, in tonight's earlier video, hell, this might be getting uploaded in the early hours of the morning, who knows? We talked about a few things that Dermot Desmond said about Rodgers, but we're kind of going to go through the full thing here because honestly, it has to be. I can't recall the last time I've seen a statement from a board that is blasted at a manager like this. Like, it's actually insane. Like, I've always said, I mean, hell, we've had enough, Rangers have had enough managerial statements, from the board in the last few years, where it's the cookie cutter shite, but to actually see a board just go through a manager it's mental, so we're not going to waste too much time. So, yeah, we'll dive into it. So, essentially, in terms of anything that was good that Dermot Desmond had to say about Rodgers, it's pretty much his highlighted bit. So he goes on to say he announced his resignation. I want to acknowledge his contribution, 2 spells as manager, success, massive parts of success in the club's modern history, yada yada yada. But from this point, it turns mental. So he says, however, I must also express my deep disappointment at the way the past several months have unfolded. When we brought Brendan back to Celtic 2 years ago, it was done with complete trust and belief in his ability to lead the club into a new era of sustained success. Unfortunately, his conduct and communication in recent months has not reflected that trust. In June, both Michael Nicholson and I expressed to Brendan that we were keen to offer him a contract extension to reaffirm the club's full backing and long-term commitment to him. He said he would need to think about it and refer, yet in subsequent press conferences, Brendan implied that the club had made no commitment to offer him a new contract. That was simply untrue. We met with Brendan regularly, including in December last year and at the start of the summer, with regular dialogue in between to discuss and agree our collective strategy, priority, approach. Every player signed and every player sold during his tenure was done so with Brendan's full knowledge, approval and endorsement. Any insinuation otherwise is absolutely false. So, Brendan Rodgers, he's been offered a new deal here by the board. There's been countless talks since last December, and there's also confirmation here for Dermot Desmond that Rodgers, every player sold has been done with Rodgers' full knowledge, approval and endorsement. And not only every player sold, every player signed. So every single in and out, Brendan Rodgers has had something to say on the matter, right? So, to me that's weird because months ago when Celtic signed a few people, Rodgers were kind of referring to them as board signings and not manager signings. So, someone's right, someone's wrong. Anyway, moving on. His later public statements about transfers and club operations came entirely out of the blue. At no point prior to those remarks had he raised any such concerns with me, Michael, or any member of the board or executive team. In reality, he was given final say all over football matters and was consistently backed in the recruitment process, including record investment in players he personally identified and improved. Approved. End of quote. So again, like record investment, that's more on the 24-25 campaign, but he still spent that money. But I think the interesting part for me is up next. When his comments were made publicly, I sought to address them directly. Brendan and I met for over 3 hours at his home in Scotland to discuss the issue. Despite ample opportunity, he was unable to identify a single instance where the club had obstructed or failed to support him. The facts did not match his public narrative. Regrettably, his words and actions since then have been divisive, misleading and self-serving. They've contributed to a toxic atmosphere around the club and fueled hostility towards members of the executive team and the board. Some of the abuse directed at them and at their families has been unwarranted and unacceptable. Every member of the board and executive team is deeply passionate about Celtic and acts at all times with professionalism, integrity and a shared desire for success. What has failed recently was not due to our structure or model, but to one individual's desire for self-preservation at the expense of others. End of quote, right? And I'm not just saying this to kick Rodgers while he's down, right? Because there's no reason for me to back up the Celtic board. But that's what it looks like. It does look like self-preservation, right? If Rodgers is bashing the board to the media, right, in the public eye, and showing this public narrative against the board, and that there's all these issues, right, and that Dermot Desmond then goes to have a meeting with him for 3 hours, and Rodgers can't bring up a single instance / example of where the club had failed him or obstructed him, in their ways to support him in the transfer window and beyond, then you've got to look at Rodgers just spinning his own narrative to get an exit for the club. This is insane to me, right? People hate the board. Some people hate Rodgers. But for a guy looking for the outside in, who can't stand any of them, alright? This looks like a guy that refused to sign a deal. The board are then thinking, well, we're not going to back you if you're not going to sign a deal, because we can't commit to that. There's no point giving money to a guy that's not going to be here next year. And because of that, that's weakened the Celtic team, which has made Rodgers head out for the board. And the reason, I mean, it's just crazy. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like Brendan Rodgers has spat the dummy because they've no backed him, but the reason they're no backing him is because he's no signing the deal. And to be honest, folks, if a manager's leaving, you totally understand why they're not going to just absolutely throw money into Brendan Rodgers and give him like another 40 million or whatever to spend if he's not the guy that's going to be there for the foreseeable future. At the same time, I'll welcome the argument the board should have sacked him. They should have done that. Instead, I mean, the rumours were, I was seeing rumours earlier that they were thinking about sacking him and he's decided to walk before he gets sacked, which I think is pretty interesting. But again, the board essentially, you can look at it, are they showing loyalty to Rodgers by not sacking him? Because they could have sacked him back in August and went, well guys, we sacked him because we do want to spend money, but we don't want to spend money on a guy that's not going to be here. Which I think most people would have took as an acceptable reason. But at the same time, you can't let a contract negotiation / beef between the manager and the board like hamper the future of the club, and that's what's happened. So yeah, and it does look like self-preservation at the expense of others. It looks like Rodgers is trying to keep his name in a good light while throwing the board under the bus. But here, the board are still a guilty party in some aspects, but I can totally understand why they didn't back Rodgers if he wasn't willing to commit to a deal. I think anybody that's... If you can just take your Rodgers tinted specs off, I think anyone can grasp that. Right? I think anyone can grasp that. Now, it does go on to talk about a few other things. Let's see. Celtic structure where the manager oversees football. The chief executive managers... Hold on. The chief executive manages operations. The board provides oversight and has served the club with great success for more than 2 decades. We all share the same ambition to ensure Celtic's continued success domestically and to achieve further progress in Europe. Every pound generated by the club is reinvested towards these goals and the continuous improvement of Celtic Football Club. Celtic is greater than any one person. Our focus now is on restoring harmony, strengthening the squad and continuing to build a club worthy of its values, traditions and supporters. End of quote there for Dermot Desmond. That is the end of the statement. No two ways about it. I mean, he's went through Rodgers, and yeah, I mean it's a sticky situation for obvious reasons. But yeah, I mean I'm going to stick to my opinion, guys. And it just looks like the board have refused to back a guy who's not willing to sign a new contract, and it's spiraled out of control from there, and it's became a bit of a blame game. But what I would say is that's what the board have got to say. The board have pulled no punches here, but that's my opinion. And the way they've went in on Rodgers, I mean that's what I'm thinking though. If the board truly didn't spend because of Rodgers, they probably would have said that here, because like I've just said, they've literally pulled no other punches. I mean, if this was a fight, Rodgers, it'd be done. It would have been done like 3 seconds into the match. I mean, maybe Rodgers is preparing, running on the beach with Apollo Creed, right? He's preparing for the next fight because he's probably going to bounce back with a statement of his own. But I don't really know if Rodgers if it's going to be the more or whatever. But all I do know is Dermot Desmond has went fucking nuclear on Brendan Rodgers, and yeah. I mean, all this at like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock into the next day. Crazy. Absolutely insane. No one expected this. I mean, honestly, when I heard people talking about, he might resign if he loses to Rangers, I thought even that was a pipe dream. I cannot believe this has happened tonight. Anyway, leave your thoughts down below. Brendan Rodgers has resigned. Some people think he's a hero for doing it. Some people think he's a card. What side of the fence do you lie on? Till next time. Peace.